Hello, hello, and welcome to the Finding the Unicorn in You podcast. What a beautiful day to inspire lives. My name is Jaime Gabriel Ragosa, your host, and I am so excited to have you here. Let's get ready to meet some fantastic unicorns and learn how to unleash the inner unicorn in you. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Finding the Unicorn in You. Today, I have an individual who has faced deaths of loved ones and has used that to learn to face life with love, optimism, and joy. She hosts the Grieving podcast and has written the book, Loving and Living Your Way Through Grief. On top of this, she hosts weekly meetings of the Grief and Happiness Alliance to help others cope through grief if they feel it. So without further ado, I welcome Emily Thiroux Threatt.
Aloha. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you for coming in. So why don't you tell our guests where you're located at, since I think that's very unique.
I live in Maui. I've lived here for 7 years, and I moved here from California, and I really love Maui. I'm very happy to be here.
And how was that transition from moving from California to an island?
It was different. A lot of people warned me about what they call island fever, that a lot of people come over here and then leave. We're really like the most remote place in the world, and I guess it could feel confining, but it never has to me. The island is shaped in a way that it's got it has a valley that goes across it, and it's not that wide where the valley is. So I live up on side of the volcano.
Okay.
And I can look down and see both sides of the island from where I live. And I just think that's really special. But more than that, I love the people and the aloha spirit here and just the whole way people treat each other. It's really beautiful.
That's amazing. And I can only imagine the view as you wake up every morning. And what a beautiful way to wake up. I feel like to really appreciate life.
Yeah, that and the sunsets are pretty spectacular.
Oh, I bet. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your career and kind of what led you to the path that you're doing now, and how did you even end up writing a book?
Well, this isn't my first book. I have been teaching writing at the university level for many years. And I teach online, actually, so I'm still teaching in California from Maui.
Oh, wow.
I really enjoyed teaching online, and writing is what I've been teaching. So after I had 2 husbands die, the second one died here on Maui, I was trying to figure out, okay, now what do I do? So I started writing about it, not for anybody else to read, just for me to explore my thoughts and feelings and dreams and what I wanted to do now. And I discovered that writing about my grief was really helping me. And I thought it'd help other people to write about their grief too. Since I didn't know a lot of people yet on the island, I put a note on Meetup and said, if you're grieving and you'd like to get together with other people who are grieving and write about it and talk about it, come on over to my house. And they did. And it was really great. I made a lot of new friends that people really did well together. It was really special, turned into a real social thing. They'd bring snacks and everything. And it was wonderful until the pandemic. And the people that were coming over had been coming over because they wanted to be with people in person, and they weren't real computer savvy. And so it didn't transition well to the computer. So I started doing it online for a new group of people, whoever I could recruit into it, to work with grief and writing about that and then talking about it. And that went pretty well. And in the meantime, not too long after my husband died, a friend of his in California died very suddenly. And he was a lot younger than my husband, and we were family friends, and I was very concerned about his wife because she had 2 teenage daughters, and her husband was gone without any warning. I stayed in contact with her. I wrote her a card every week for the first year, and I made the cards. I took pictures here. I love taking pictures in Hawaii. I put a picture from Hawaii on the front, and then I wrote something on the inside that had something to do with what she'd be dealing with at that time during her first year. And it was really special. But as a writer, after I wrote those 52 things, I thought, I have an outline for a book. So that's what inspired my book. And I wrote that. and it was doing very well, but I kept thinking there was something missing. And after my first husband that died was gone, I was really having a hard time. We'd been married 22 years, and it was rough. So I found a book called Happy for No Reason by Marcy Shimoff, and I thought, that sounds like a good idea. So I read that, and it helped me. I liked what she had to say and how she explained happiness and how it works and how good it is for you. And I thought that's what's missing with my grief writing. We're not talking about things that are happy too. People need to understand that they can grieve and be happy at the same time, and that life will be so much better for them if they do. So that's when I created my Grief and Happiness podcast. I actually became a certified Happy for No Reason trainer, because that's something that Marcy Shimoff does, and I thought that'd be perfect to help me with what I'm doing. And then I started an organization called the Grief and Happiness Alliance, and we meet every week and write about grief and learn happiness practices. And we even have a nonprofit organization that we formed to go with it, to pay for it, so people don't have to pay to come and have this opportunity.
That's amazing. And you did something that a lot of us go through, and in my opinion, is one of the hardest transitions that one can go through, losing a loved one. And you made something beautiful out of it, and you made a community, and you were able to foster this happiness through similarities that some people wouldn't even want to put together, because it's pain. We don't want to, we try to run away from it. We hardly want to lean into it and actually feel it. But how was the process when you first started? Was it difficult having people be vulnerable and lean into the grief?
Not so much, because I think the people that came to write about it were at a point where they needed to be around people who also had been dealing with loss, so that they'd get them. It's hard talking to somebody who's never had a loved one die and have them have any idea of the experiences that you're having. So people crave being together with other people who are dealing with loss when they are. And that makes it a really special time to do things like groups. And it's not always easy to find a group, because a lot of times with a grief group, you'll get together and everybody's so sad and crying. And I thought, I can't do that. I'm trying to hold myself together, and just falling apart in front of people I don't know isn't going to help me. I did find something here on Maui called the Death Cafe, and they have death cafes across the country. And I hadn't heard of them before, though. And the one here, we'd meet at a Mexican food restaurant, of all places, and eat nachos and talk about our experiences that had to do with death and dying. And it was a good place to have a conversation. And that worked really well until, with the pandemic, everything fell apart. So we didn't have that anymore either. But I know they do some death cafes online, and they are available if anybody wants to Google that. They're in different places in the country, and it's a neat concept.
That's beautiful. And I like that there's such a big network of people that are willing to connect with others that are experiencing the same pain. I know recently I had a loved one pass away last year, and it was very hard for my whole family. And I don't want to say it was interesting, but it was different to see how each person coped with it. And we all, instead of leaning in together and talking about it and really feeling it together, we isolated ourselves. And that's why my question was if it was difficult. But I do think that after a while, you do want to talk about it. You do want to express it. And it's different, because it's a unique experience that you don't experience every day. And you're not really taught, you're taught the concept of death, but you're not really taught how to process it.
Yeah. All of a sudden, the person just isn't there. They were there, and then they're not there. And you mentioned that it was a family death, and families, it's not unusual for them to deal with it the way you described, where everybody's processing things in a different way. And they either don't want to show how they're feeling, or they feel like one person's entitled to grieve more than somebody else. There's all sorts of weird dynamics that go on within families, and it's not unusual. And a lot of what I do, the people that come have never met each other before, and they're talking to strangers, and they feel like they can open up and say things that they wouldn't say to somebody that they were going to run into at the grocery store or be at the next family gathering together, so that they really can talk. And we actually have people come from all over the world, which is really neat. We just had somebody come from Portugal. Somebody from, she's moved to the United States, but she's recently from Pakistan. We have several people in Canada. We have Australia, New Zealand, England. They're all over the place. And the groups aren't real big. And if they get big, then we'll divide up into breakout rooms on Zoom so that it's more intimate and you can talk to people. And you're likely to talk to different people every time that you come. And so you can make new friends, and you have something that you can relate to each other with in a way that you can support each other. And I think people long to do that. They want to help somebody else, not just have somebody else help them.
Yeah, I love that. And you're like I said, you're building something very beautiful, and you're bringing a lot of people from different backgrounds together. And that's something that is rarely seen, where we can actually have something in common and bring us together and showing us we're not so different and we all feel the same thing at some point in our life. So it's amazing what you're doing. And with this, I have my next question. In our lives, we all experience several transitions. So as you're building this community, this organizations, and the service for people, what was one of the most shocking transitions that you had to go through?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Because I don't feel like a whole lot about what I've been doing was shocking, because it was coming so easily. It was like I had written a lot about it. I'd meditated on it. I had thought about it, and I just kept experimenting with things. And one of the things, rather than shocking, that I'd call surprising that happened was the support I got from people. Before I started the Grief and Happiness Alliance, I wasn't sure if people were going to buy this idea of grief and happiness. And so I wanted to try it out. So I decided to do a pilot program. And I invited a lot of people, some that I knew well and some that I didn't know at all. And they were from different places around the country. And they came, we had 3 sessions, and they came and had the experience of it. And then at the last session, we talked about it. And they were so willing to support. They love the idea. They love the concept. One of the people who came, who I still haven't figured out how we ever got together, but she had started, I had a Facebook grief writing book, group, and she would write for things there. And she was a beautiful writer, just a fabulous writer. And I don't know how she found that group, but she did, and I'm so glad that she did. But at the meeting, at the end of the meeting, when we had decided that we were going to do the nonprofit at that meeting, because they came up with that, because they said they agreed with me that they didn't want to have people have to pay to get this kind of support. And she said, "This is an idea whose time has come." And I never forgot. That kind of surprised me, and I thought it was quite beautiful. And everybody else bought into it that was there. And the support has been ongoing ever since we started it.
I really like that phrase, especially like you said, if it's coming so organic and it feels right, then it was time. It was time for that to blossom, and you watered it over the years, and finally, let's take forth to this new adventure. Beautiful, beautifully said.
Thank you. It's a beautiful experience.
And I love everything that you're doing, and I really do appreciate the work that you do. And if, with all of the experience and knowledge you've gained throughout this whole process, if you could pick a point in time and talk to your younger self and give yourself a piece of advice that would help you with the knowledge that you have now, what would you tell yourself?
With all I've learned through all of this, I would tell myself to be mindful, because I don't really think I was doing a lot and doing things because I thought I had to do them. I wasn't smiling much because I was just going through the motions of doing what I felt I needed to live my life. And now I am mindful. Now I do pay attention to being happy every day. I write in my journal every day something that brought me joy the day before, besides all the things that I'm grateful for. And when you're focusing on that sort of thing, it's easy to be more comfortable and to be happier and be able to help other people and want to be around other people and help them. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think it's easier said than done because I know
Mhm.
that I've practiced mindfulness. I teach laughter yoga classes and I do life coaching where I teach people to really focus on their self-care, but I preach it. And then later I realize that I'm not doing it myself. I get so
Yeah.
overwhelmed with trying to get to do everything and trying to accomplish as many things as possible that I forget to enjoy the process and to really just smile, like you said, and really just the little things in life, like waking up and drinking your cup of coffee, or seeing the sunrise, or seeing the sunset. Little things that is hard. It's so easy to miss if you don't pay attention to it. So, how do you remind yourself to not skip these beautiful moments that happen as they happen?
Well, part of it is habit. Where I live, most of the year we can see really beautiful sunsets from where I am. And I look at them. I've gone through most of my life without paying attention. I've been surprised every once in a while when I see a really spectacular sunset and think, wow, it'd be neat to live a place where they have those. And then I found out that I lived a place where they had them all the time. I just wasn't looking up. It's deciding that's what you want and putting your heart into that. And it's a lot easier. One thing that I say to people that they're shocked at is that I'm happier now than I ever have been. And I don't have a husband now. And I've been married like most of my life. So you'd think that would make it, you would want to have that expectation and you would think that was a requirement for happiness, but it isn't. I truly am happier now than I ever have been because that's what I focus on. I focus on smiling and loving and being kind and helping other people. And I can't help but be happy that way.
I love that. And I think a lot of us do put a lot of weight in external happiness. Like we need someone to be happy, that we can't fully be 100% ourselves without someone else being there. But you can, even now, for people who are single or widowed or divorced, you can still find that sense of happiness through self-discovery, through appreciation, through mindfulness.
Mhm.
And you are complete. Whatever
Mhm.
else everybody tells you, you are complete the way you are. You just need to find and really tune into it.
That's right. My husband, Ron, the last one who died, used to always say, "You're whole, complete, and perfect." And I had never looked at myself that way before. But when you look at yourself that way, you realize, yeah, you are.
I completely agree. And for someone who may be struggling with either this or grief in itself, and they're barely starting through the process, what advice can you give them to help their transition a little bit easier?
Well, the very first thing I tell people to do, because people are always asking me, what do I do? Especially early on when it just happens. And I say, take good care of yourself. Self-care is absolutely vital. If you need to eat a pint of ice cream, or if you need to watch a movie and not pay attention to it, if you need to lay around in the bed for a week, whatever it is that you need to do to take care of yourself, do that. And make sure you do take care of it. Do eat, do bathe, do brush your teeth. And it sounds funny to say that you have to tell somebody things like that, but in grief, you can easily kind of zone out into a place where you feel like nothing really matters.
Mm.
And you'll find out that the action of standing in front of the mirror and brushing your teeth is a beautiful self-care thing. It's important. Taking a
Mhm.
shower. Um, my husband went to a conference with a friend of his, and they shared a room, and he said that he was surprised when his friend came out from a shower, and he said, "The morning shower is proof there is a God." And I always remembered that. I just thought it was so cute. A morning shower or a nice soaky bath, reading a good book, sitting outside or going for a walk. I know one of my friends really early in my grief here just came by my house one day and she said, "Get in the car." So I did. I followed directions because that was one thing. I wasn't coming up with directions for myself very much, but I did. And she took me to the beach and she says, "I know you don't feel like walking, so I brought a beach chair and you can sit here on the sand while I walk and you can watch me walk." and And it was great to just sit there because I live here where there's these gorgeous beaches and I was not going outside even and not going to them. And the process of having somebody just encourage me and actually take me there and say, "Here, just sit and pay attention to what you're saying and what's going on." And it was quite a beautiful experience.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I always tell people. If you feel someone is going through something, just go and visit them. Just your
Mhm.
presence. They may not think that they want you there, and they're probably going to reject you sometimes when you get there. But
Mhm.
you don't have to say anything. Just sit there and sit in silence. Just being there with them helps. I know when I was in pain and I lost my uncle, but my cousins, their father, were the ones who were really feeling it. So I decided I took the week off and I just went and just stayed with them. And I did what I could. And I was trying to just brighten up the mood. I cooked, I cleaned. But half of the time we were just sitting there, just staring at each other. But it was very comforting. And what some of the most beautiful conversations that I've ever had with them just fostered because we were just sitting in silence and just reminiscing about life. And
Mhm.
that's something that you can't really compare with anything else. And like the beauty that you really see in just being together.
It's so important. And sometimes as the person who's dealing with grief, it's hard to just say yes to somebody, but yet it's important to do that. I know when my husband, Ron, died here on Maui, he was on hospice for just a week. And so we knew that it was coming rapidly. And so he called everybody he wanted to talk to, and that people who could flew over and spent the week with us. We had people staying on neighbors' houses, and on blow up mattresses. They were all over the place because they didn't even want to go out to a motel. They wanted to be close.
Mm-hmm.
And for that week, it was magical. People just took care of the food. They had a barbecue. They had music. They were all talking. People who didn't know each other before became fast friends. It was really beautiful. And my husband talked to everybody that he wanted to talk to on the phone because not everybody could come. And fortunately, at that time, there was FaceTime and he could, look at them face to face. And actually, I just had a really neat experience that resulted from that surprised me. He had a minister that he had worked with in California, in Encinitas, actually.
Okay.
For quite a while. And they were really close and he hadn't seen him in years. And he was real concerned that he wasn't going to be able to get a hold of him, but he did. And they had a really great conversation. And he was so happy that he got to talk to him. And my husband died 5.5 years ago. And this year on Valentine's Day, I was just okay. And I got a phone call, and usually I don't pick up the phone when I don't recognize the phone number, but I thought it was the name of the church where that minister was. And I thought, I wonder if it's him. So I picked it up, and it was. And I was so surprised that he called me and he said, "I just got to tell you that I was cleaning off my desk today and I picked up a book and out of it fell a note with your phone number and your name on it. And it was because we were using my phone for him to make the FaceTime calls." And he said, I thought that just meant I was supposed to talk to you. And he says, "I think Ron was trying to have me say Happy Valentine's Day to you." Blew me away.
Wow.
But so when you stay open to beautiful things happening, they happen. And if you shut yourself off, you can't let them in.
I agree. And what a beautiful story. It really touched me. I'm really trying not to be sentimental, but
I understand. It really touched me what had happened.
And I don't believe in coincidences. I do think that everything does happen the way it's supposed to happen. And that is such an amazing experience to see that. And I agree. When you're open to meet new people, to experience new things, you see the beauty in what happens. And like I said, no bad things will happen on purpose. Everything does happen for a reason, and you're meant to go through that for whatever lesson you need to learn at that point. You may not appreciate it during the moment, but years later is when you really say, wow, this is what I learned from that moment, from that experience.
Yeah. And I should tell you about meeting Ron because I think it's an interesting story. I had no intention of dating. I had no intention of going out with anybody. I was teaching at the university and coming home and sitting by myself, essentially. And I was okay with that. And one of my friends at the university started pestering me about going on Match.com. And she's about my age, and she wasn't married. She had been engaged, and that ended, unfortunately. And I said, you go on Match.com. She said, no, you need to go on Match.com. She was saying it over and over. And finally I said, okay, for her to be saying this so much to me, there must be a reason for it. So I went on that evening that she'd been saying it all day long. It was just on one day. And before I went on, I wrote a list of everything that I would demand to have in somebody that I would even go out with. I wasn't going to settle for anything. Big, long list. And then I wrote my little bio, and I didn't put a whole lot into it because I wasn't really committed to doing this thing. And the first few people I saw on there thought, well, this is exactly why I didn't want to go on Match.com. These people are not the kind of people I even want to be in the same room with. And then Ron came on, and I read his write-up that he did about himself with my list next to me, and I started checking off the things on the list, and he was every single thing on the list. It was amazing. And so we did end up getting together, and a few weeks later, he said, I want to go meet your friend that got us together. So I called her, and she said, sure, come on over. And we went over, and they kept looking at each other. And I thought, oh, wow, were they dating, or is there something strange here? Or I couldn't figure out what it was. And finally, one of them said, were you at UCLA during these years? And they were in the same groups. They did things together at UCLA. They weren't friends, but they were very aware of each other at UCLA when they were in college many years before. And that I thought was pretty amazing. And then a few weeks after that, I thought there's just something that's been bothering me that I feel like I met him before someplace, but I didn't know where it possibly could have been. And then it dawned on me that many months before, a friend of mine had asked me if I'd like to go with her to see Sister Helen Prejean. She's the nun who wrote Dead Man Walking. Because she was doing a lecture at the university. And I thought, well, that could be interesting. And so we went. And when we got there, she said, I hope you don't mind, but a friend of mine wanted to sit with us because has met this new guy in town. They're not dating or anything, but she wanted to bring him to this. And so I said, I don't care. And when they came in and we all stood up and I looked at him and I thought, wow. And he took my hand to shake it, and he held it instead. And it was like electricity. And I thought, wow, this woman is a lucky woman. I don't know why she says she's not dating him. But I didn't think anything of it because they were together, and we watched the rest of the lecture. And I didn't think of it again until that evening when I realized that he was that person that I met at that lecture.
Wow. So your paths were crossing.
Mm-hmm.
And they were intertwined. They do say that by a certain age, you are going to meet your loved one. It's just that it may not be the right timing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're proving the statement. Wow. What a beautiful relationship and a beautiful story. And this is a good way to keeping him alive and really cherishing his memories.
Yes.
So thank you so much for sharing. I really do appreciate it. My last question for you, and it's the whole premise of the podcast. You went through this amazing unicorn transformation where you took something that was really rough and you went with it and you made it into something beautiful, and it lit something in you that made you a whole new person, reached self-discovery and happiness. What can someone do, or what are some small things that you recommend people do to start their process of becoming a unicorn?
Well, I would say to pay attention, because a lot of times things happen and they happen right around you and you don't even notice that they happen.
Mhm.
Like meeting Ron that first time,
Mhm.
I might not have ever seen him again, but something kept telling me that. And to me, when I realized that it happened and I mentioned it, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I remember that." It was one of those, it was meant to be thing.
Mhm.
And I'm glad I did pay attention when I met him on Match. There was a reason that I went on Match and went on the Match that day. And it was the first day that both of us were on Match.
Oh, wow.
It's pay attention, really pay attention. And I would say, because I'm a writer and I believe in journaling and writing all the time, start writing about what you want, like that list I made about what I really wanted to have in a companion. Whatever it is you want in life, write about it, make lists
Mhm.
about it. You'll find yourself more likely to be in the presence of whatever it is if you are thinking about it and focusing on it. And that way you can do it. And then the other thing is to say yes, because so many times we get in our own way. And if somebody invites you to do something or tells you about something that you think might be interesting, just say yes, just do it. That actually really helped me after Jacques died. I had not been doing anything. I was lost, essentially. And he died in February. And when New Year's Eve rolled around, I thought, I'm going to make a resolution or resolutions or something. I've got to make a change. I have to do something. And so I wrote about it and thought about it. And I just wasn't able to come up with resolutions. And what finally came to me was that I needed to accept invitations.
Mm.
And then I said, that's really dumb. Nobody's inviting you to do anything or go anywhere. You're sitting at home by yourself all the time. But I didn't let that voice in my head convince me of that. And I decided to accept invitations. And they started coming as soon as I did. And I had amazing experiences because of the invitations that I received. Everything from being invited to be on the editorial board for the newspaper for a year term, which was absolutely fascinating, to going as a nurse on bicycle races where I'd be in the follow car and take care of the people that we were following in the race. That was an amazing experience. There were lots of, and I could go on. That year, it was like the year of invitations and experiences that were miraculous, but they only happened because I told myself I was going to say yes when somebody invited me to do something.
What great pieces of nuggets. Those 3 pieces of advice, I love them. And I really love the last one because that's what allowed me to get to the journey that I am in now. And I've had a friend that said, can you please come in on my podcast? I just want you as a guest. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to say yes. What's the worst that could happen? And now I'm running my own podcast. So you just never know where the journey is going to take you if you're just open to it and just say yes.
That's right. Just say yes.
Well, this has been such an amazing conversation, and it's been such a joy to get to meet you and really talk to you about all of this. If someone wants to get a hold of you, asking you some questions, or purchase your book, how can they do so?
Well, the book's available any place where books are sold. It's called Loving and Living Your Way Through Grief. And I have a new book that's coming out at probably the end of September, or not September, the end of April.
Okay.
Might be May. That's called the Grief and Happiness Handbook. And I've written it for our Grief and Happiness Alliance nonprofit organization so that we can sell it and have that help support our organization. So that'll be out. So look for that. My email address is emily@lovingandlivingyourwaythroughgrief.com. And you can find out about all the grief and happiness things on griefandhappiness.com. And there was one more thing. Oh, my podcast is Grief and Happiness. And you can listen to that any place you listen to podcasts.
Perfect. And I'll have a link of all of these wonderful things in the show notes. People can just click on it and go straight through there. But it's been such an amazing time.
I really enjoyed meeting you.
Likewise. And for the audience, if you like this type of content, make sure to leave a 5-star review. Episodes come out every Friday at 7 a.m. And once again, Emily, thank you so much for your time and all of the wisdom that you gave us today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And I was very happy to be here.